Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training, we're going to go ahead and talk about your new paradigm and world view. So inside of this training, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make sure that we go ahead and bring home everything that it is that we spoke about inside of this module. And we're really going to go ahead and make sure that we summarize all of the major problems with society's current paradigm and exactly what the transformation paradigm says instead, okay? And so I just do want to go ahead and emphasize here, this is not the final training inside of this module, okay? This is only going to be the final training for the big 5 problems with society's current way of thinking. And at the end of this training, we're going to talk about what your next action steps are going to be. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a hint right now. It's only going to get better for the rest of this module, okay? So let's go ahead and jump right in and really cement all of the information and all of the foundational knowledge that we've gone ahead and covered inside of this module so far. So from the very beginning of this module, we actually talked about the dark force that was holding you back, right? And we went ahead and talked about and laid the foundations of the 2 biggest things that are going to be talked about or were talked about inside of module number 2, and that was your paradigm and your identity, right? We talked about the dark force that is holding you back really is at the end of the day yourself. It's who you are that has created the entire life that you currently live. And we said that a lot of that has been shaped by society's current paradigm, and we went ahead and defined exactly what a paradigm is. And we talked about that the paradigm is basically your identity, but it's more than just your identity. It's really the lens by which you look at everything. It's your thoughts, behaviors, your beliefs, right? All of these things that shape the lens by which you look at the entire world, by which you look at other people, by which you look at food, by politics, literally everything. All of that together, that bubble that you look through, that lens, that is your paradigm. And so we went ahead and talked about society's current paradigm, and we gave some very shocking and some very revealing statistics about what society's paradigm has resulted in for the average person that is following its way of thinking. And so then we went ahead and introduced the big 5 problems with society's paradigm. And we talked about how essentially society's broken way of thinking has created that life that is broken in people's health, in people's wealth, in people's relationships, in people's connection to something greater. All of that has been broken as a result of those who follow society's current way of thinking. And so we said that, hey, we do need a new paradigm. We do need to make sure that for ourselves, we do not continuously and perpetually live the life that most of those in society do. And so we went ahead and emphasized that if we always do what we've always done, we are always going to get what we've always gotten, right? And if you want to live a common life, then you can have common views. But if you don't want to live a common life, then you can't have common views, okay? If you think the way that everyone else does, then you'll have the life that everyone else lives, right? If you want something that you've never had, you're going to have to become someone that you've never been. You're going to have to think about things the way that you never have, and you're going to have to do things that you've never done, right? And what got you to where you are now is not going to get you to where you want to go. And so the definition of insanity is really doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. So these are all of the reasons why we need a new paradigm, and that's exactly what we went ahead and embarked on inside of this journey in this module thus far, to go ahead and really lay the foundation of this new paradigm for you so you can start to be able to think about the world completely differently. So that is what we went ahead and talked about in the very first training, the dark force holding you back and the dark force sabotaging you inside of this module. And then what we did is we went ahead and went over to the first problem with society's current paradigm, and that was the big lie of identity. And what we did inside of this training is we spoke about exactly what the big lie of identity is and how society tells us that we are a specific person, when truthfully at the end of the day we actually can be whoever we want to be. And that's what the transformation paradigm tells us, right? Society tells this person that, hey, you are Larry, you're XYZ, you're shy, you're anxious, XYZ, and then all of a sudden over time this person starts to say, hey, I am Larry, I'm not very smart, I am shy, I am anxious, I am introverted, right? And they start to believe all of the beliefs and the lies and the identities and the labels that society has given that person. And then after a while, they've started to give themselves as well. And so instead, what we learned was that the transformation paradigm flips this on its head. And rather than talking about the fixed self, and rather than talking about the static self. The transformation paradigm instead introduces this concept of the becoming self. And at the end of the day, you can be who you want to be, because at the end of the day, you are really just a summation of all of the thoughts, the beliefs, and the inputs, and the choices, and the actions that you've made in your life, when in reality, you can change those things, right? You can be whoever you want to be, rather than being stuck with who you think you are, right? And so whenever you think that you are stuck, whenever you start to get overwhelmed, oh man, this is too much, I can't actually change any of this, you know that you've fallen into the trap of believing society's current paradigm. And we also explored the idea that a lot of that does mean that you are going to have to lose parts of yourself in order to become another person, right? When society infiltrates our minds and tells us that, hey, you have to stay true to yourself, you can't lose yourself, you can't become somebody else, you have to stay true to your roots, all of those are just beliefs that are holding us back from becoming the person that we need to be in order to be able to create the life that we actually want to create. And so that is why this training was so absolutely critical for us to be able to understand. And then we really talked about identity statements as well, right? We talked about how the transformation paradigm believes that we can be whoever we want to be. And so some of the things that we spoke about to really hit that training home was we said, hey, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be, right? What you got you to where you are right now is not going to get you to where you want to go, right? The person that got you to where you are now is not the person that you need to become in order to get to where you want to go, right? If you want to have something that you've never had, you have to become someone that you've never been. And so in the same way we talked about the definition of insanity, this also applies to yourself. If you've always been the same person that you've always been, then you're always going to get those same outcomes. And so at the end of the day, the world is going to ask you, hey, who are you becoming? And if you don't know, then the world is going to tell you who you are. And so at the end of the day, from the big part of this training was that the question is not who am I, but instead the question is who am I becoming? And then from there, what we did is we went ahead and went over to problem number 2, which was the misguided focus for transformation. And inside of problem number 2, we really unveiled the problem that society has with telling its followers that, hey, what you got to do first is you got to focus on what you want to have and just focus on having. And then there's a few people that say, okay, cool, I'm going to then instead focus on the actions that I need to do. But then it never actually talks about who you need to become in order to do those actions, so that way you can actually have what you want to have, right? And so society's current paradigm says do the having, and then maybe you'll be able to get to the doing, but it never actually talks about the being. Instead, what we talked about was the transformation paradigm and what it says in terms of the correct focus for transformation. And we said that that was by first focusing on the being, and then we get to the doing, and then we get to the having, right? So when we focus on our identity, who we are becoming, then that effortlessly allows us to be able to do those actions, because naturally it's a byproduct of who we are becoming. There's no motivation necessary because it's just who we are. And then when we do those actions of who we are, all of a sudden we're going to be able to get the outcomes that we are looking for, right? And so we talked about also the hybrid approach, where sometimes some of us are very challenged in being able to identify who we want to become. And so instead what we do is you say, okay, what is the outcome that I want to have? And then what is the identity that I will need to have in order to get that outcome? And then we can focus on the actions from there as well, right? So that's really what we spoke about inside of problem number 2. We talked about be, do, and then have. And then ultimately you want to make sure that you do remember that if you are inside of this program and you are getting a different result from someone else who is doing the same actions as you inside of this program, then the question that you need to really ask yourself is, who was I being when I was doing those actions? Because that is ultimately the reason why you would get a different outcome than anybody else. And so when put into a table, this is what we talked about, the having, the doing, and the being, focusing on the outcome versus focusing on the action versus focusing on the becoming and the identity. And we said that inside of the transformation paradigm, what we do is we do focus on the becoming and we focus on the identity, and really every single day perfecting and becoming that person, so that way over time we are able to effortlessly create our outcomes, okay? So then we talked about problem number 3, and problem number 3 was all about the false belief of reality. Now, this was one of the most important trainings inside of module number 2, because what it did was it really unveiled to us the lie in which society tells us that you are the way you are because of your environment, and that there is only one truth. When in reality, what we actually learned via the transformation paradigm inside of this training was that our brains actually reconstruct reality, and they're not able to see reality for what reality actually is. And we said the reason that was the case is because what our brain is doing is it's taking information from 3 sources, from from our sensory organs, from our memory, and from our imagination. And then it's processing that because these three sources of information are limited, and therefore the brain is unable to see or interact with reality as reality is, right? And so we said that our brain actually creates these generalizations and assumptions about the world rather than seeing real world reality as it is. And so these generalizations about everything that are around us are stored in our minds as mental images, and that's what we call beliefs, right? And so these beliefs are generalizations that we have made about the world based on our past experiences, based on our memories, based off our imagination, all of these things. And then these beliefs are really the core of what makes up our paradigm, right? And we talked about the paradigm already. And so that lens that we see the entire world through, all of that happened as a result of our belief. It's the lens by which we see the rest of the world. And then from there, we went on and we spoke about the RAS, and we said that the RAS utilizes these beliefs in order to really go ahead and look for confirmation. We spoke about confirmation bias. We said that we're looking for confirmation via the RAS about what we truly believe, even if it might not actually be there. And we spoke about the example of the Toyota Camry or the red car, and the reason why all of a sudden we can see so many of those red cars or Toyota Camrys on the road is not because they weren't there before, but it's because our RAS is primed to be able to see them. And so then we spoke about the belief confirmation cycle and the power of this feedback loop on how what you believe becomes what you experience, and then what you experience becomes what you believe, and then this feedback loop just feeds over and over and over and over again, and then it can either become a virtuous cycle of positivity that works for us as our best friend, or it becomes a vicious cycle of negativity that works against us as our worst enemy. And that really is the power of beliefs, right? And so ultimately, that's what led us to understand that reality truly is just the grand and great illusion, because there is no one true reality, right? It's the biggest lie of the mind that we can see reality as reality is, when the truth is that our minds actually create reality. And so when the rest of the world and the rest of society is living and believing in what they believe is objective reality, right? And objective reality says that, oh, I experience life and I experience reality exactly how it is. I got cheated, and therefore it must mean that I got cheated, right? There's only one truth, right? The events of my life have shaped who I am today. There's no other way around it. When in reality, the transformation paradigm believes in the constructed model of reality, in that my thoughts and beliefs are the things that are actually creating my experience of reality, right? And so based off of how the brain works, we understand that there are unlimited possibilities for reality because every human being is experiencing the world differently, right? And so if at the end of the day, society is all based on a grand illusion, the question then is, why not create our own? Why not create our own reality? Because we have the power to create our own reality. And so at the end of the day, ultimately, it does not matter what is actually true right now. The only thing that matters is what we believe to be true. Because with work, what we believe to be true will also become true, as well as we start to create and shape our own reality. So that was an extremely, extremely powerful training. And the expanded version of that training was when we spoke about the false belief of money, and a lot of the false beliefs that if you carry these things about money, if you believe that money is bad, then your brain is not going to allow you to be able to become somebody who is able to create an income for themselves. If you believe that rich people are greedy and selfish, then your brain is not going to allow you to become somebody who identifies as greedy or selfish or any other negative connotation, right? And so if you truly want to become rich, then you're going to have to change your beliefs about what it means to be rich or have money, right? And so we spoke about verbal conditioning, modeling, and specific instances that create our beliefs about money. And then I gave you a little hint of what the truth about money actually is. And we learned a little bit about how money is actually a skill, how money is not bad, it's just a tool. And really that's just a sneak peek of what we're actually going to be talking more about inside of phase number 2 when we start to focus truly on money and business skills. Remember, phase number 1, we're really focusing on the certification process. We're focusing on you becoming an amazing remote wellness practitioner, understanding the psychology of transformation, understanding the science, the art, and the process of transformation, right? That's what we're talking about in phase number 1. And I just wanted to give you that sneak peek about the beliefs about money so you can really start to connect this together for yourself. But we're going to get into some really, really, really amazing insights about what money actually truly is inside of phase number 2 as well, okay? From there, we went ahead and went into another doozy of a mind-blowing training, and that was problem number 4, which was being a prisoner to your thoughts and emotions. And inside of this training, we really opened our eyes to this concept of consciousness and choice, and being able to free ourselves from our thoughts and emotions and really being able to put ourselves into observer mode. And we said that most people in society are sleepwalking through life, living reactively based on automatic, knee-jerk, autopilot reactions because they unconsciously are obeying their thoughts and emotions, which are telling them to do one thing one moment and then believe and do something else completely the next moment. And so we said a lot of that has to do because most people don't realize that there are actually 2 selves inside of their brain. There's the conscious self and there is the limbic self, right? And so we talked about how they are at odds with each other and how they're competing with each other in order to be able to control the steering wheel that is you. And so we also talked about how the limbic subconscious self, all it's really doing and its number one job and its number one priority is not to help you thrive, but instead the limbic self is designed to help you survive, right? And so a lot of times what it's going to do is going to try to go ahead and take us into survival mode. And so when it does that, we go ahead and go into limbic mode where it's going ahead and controlling the steering wheel, and the conscious self is basically just RIP. And so instead of becoming a slave to this, what we did is we talked about, hey, we got to instead focus on going into observer mode and not becoming a prisoner to our thoughts and emotions, not becoming lost in our thoughts and emotions. And instead what we got to do is we got to get into observer mode to be able to identify these thoughts and emotions and separate ourselves from them. So instead of riding this roller coaster as a participant of the thoughts and emotions, what we do is we observe the thoughts and emotions from a distance, okay? We separate ourselves from them. We are not our thoughts and emotions. We are the observer of the thoughts and the emotions. And we talked about a lot of different tools and a lot of different activities that we can do to cultivate that conscious muscle so that way this entire process can become easier and easier and easier for us, right? Finally, we went ahead and closed out that training with talking about not labeling human emotions as problems, right? Because what we have to do is we have to stop labeling these emotions as problems, because at the end of the day, they are completely normal. And at the end of the day, they can only be managed. They cannot be stopped. They cannot be controlled. They can only be managed by us going into observer mode, right? Because if at the end of the day, if we only ever felt good or happy all the time, then it wouldn't feel good or happy. It would just feel normal. The only way to know the opposite of something, the only way to know something is to know the opposite of that thing. The only way to know that it's light outside is to know that what it means to be dark outside. And so the lows of life are the ones that make the highs of life worth living. And so if on our deathbed, we want to look back at our life and say, hey, you know what? I actually did experience life to its fullest. It means that we actually want to experience the pain and the negativity, quote unquote negativity, right? Because at the end of the day, we are ascribing that meaning of negativity to it, but negative, quote unquote, that comes along with being human. Because that negative experience or that quote unquote pain is truly what allows us to be able to know the happiness and the good. Right? And so at the end of the day, if we want to experience the entire human experience out of life, that means that we need to be able to be okay with experiencing both the ups and the downs, because without the downs, the ups do not mean anything. And so it's a little bit of a perspective change, because we want the pain and the hardship. It's what makes life worth living. And so we closed out this training by reminding ourselves that the question that we want to ask ourselves on a regular basis is, am I conscious right now or am I going limbic, right? Because at the end of the day, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate. And so at the end of the day, it does not matter your circumstance, because each of us has the power to choose and ascribe meaning to the circumstance that we are in. And that is truly the power of what it means to be human. That is what makes us different than animals, because animals do not have the power of choice and they cannot ascribe different meanings to their circumstances, right? And so at the end of the day, what we said inside of this training was that it's time for us to stop living reactively. It's time for us to stop sleepwalking through life. It's time for us to wake up and really use the power of what makes us human, which is our consciousness, and it's time to become conscious. From there, we went ahead and went over to problem number 5, which was all about not declaring ourselves broken. And so inside of this final training, when we talked about society's broken paradigm, we really learned about why change is hard, right? We learned about something called the upper limit problem. We learned about the homeostatic impulse, which automatically is always trying to sabotage us and bring us back to our normal baseline, even if that means that normal baseline is taking a regression, right? We always have these patterns of existence in which we're not able to get higher than a certain thermostat setting, and we don't allow ourselves to go lower than a certain thermostat setting. And so what we got to do is we got to just go ahead and get rid of the entire equation, and we got to reprogram the thermostat so that way we can reset our baselines, and that way we can truly get out of this issue of the upper limit problem. So we talked about overcoming the upper limit problem. We said that all has to do with whenever we feel that we are sabotaging ourselves, whenever we feel like we are engaging in negative thought patterns that are going to sabotage us to that lower level again, we need to go ahead and consciously choose something else differently. From there, inside of that training, we also learned about brain synapses and how they create ruts and how we literally rewire ourselves at a physical level that allows us to repeat behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs. And that's why it's so important to consciously be careful of what actions and thoughts we repeat over and over and over again, because these synapses and these ruts get stronger and stronger. So it's very important to make sure that we are consciously choosing what it is that we want to believe and what it is that we want to do. And so those were the big 5 problems with society's paradigm. And it was quite a ride. If you look back at all of the things that we've gone ahead and covered, I bet you did not expect a crash course on topics like identity and transformation and reality and beliefs and the brain and consciousness and choice and childhood conditioning and change, right? When you signed up for this program, you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to learn how to be able to make 6+ figures online. And I reminded you over and over and over again inside of this training at every single stage is that this training and this module has more to do with making money than you could ever imagine, okay? And that really is our goal inside of this program, is to over deliver to you and transform your life in so many more ways than you ever thought possible. Because by understanding the big 5 problems that society has with its current paradigm and its current way of thinking, what you're doing is you're really priming your brain to be able to make that switch to thinking and becoming someone completely different. When we start that process of challenging some of the things that you have thought and believed in your entire life, whether that be identity, whether that be something as much as your belief or your consciousness or your reality, what we're doing is we're priming your brain for what's about to happen in the rest of this module in the upcoming trainings, right? Because at the end of the day, your entire life, you have not yet become someone who can make 6 and 7 figures online consistently and effortlessly, right? That is why you're inside of this program. And so until we actually reprogram you into becoming a different person, you will be unable to achieve this outcome, okay? And so what that means is that you are going to have to do the work to be able to think and be somebody who can make that sort of income online effortlessly. And that's why we had to go through all of this foundation, and really starting with these big 5, that really was setting the foundation for what it is that we're going to talk about, right? These are the principles behind the paradigm that the most successful people in the world have, and now you have that foundational understanding of them also, okay? Now, a couple quick points as we start to close out this training. I want to go ahead and emphasize here is that you may potentially feel yourself getting lost in society's paradigm over and over again, right? This shift to this new paradigm is not going to happen overnight, okay? And so while you are learning the new transformation paradigm and really starting to make it a part of how you think, just like everything else in life, it is going to require repetition over and over and over again. And so there are many students, right? Most students come back to this module and review it really on a monthly basis until this becomes as good as the back of their hand, right? And so my recommendation for you is to come back to this training regularly until it becomes a part of you and you're really able to effortlessly live as a part of the transformation paradigm, okay? Remember, at the end of the day, it's not a black and white switch. It's not, am I thinking through the transformation paradigm or not, right? Because if you think about it that way, that's a black or white switch. It's how much am I using the transformation paradigm, right? It's not black or white. There's a lot of color and gray in between. And so as long as you are 51-49 on using this new transformation paradigm, that means that you're making that progress to this right way of thinking. And so with that being said, that is really where I want to come here, and I really want to go ahead and introduce you, and I really want to go ahead and welcome you to this new paradigm. If you remember when we started this journey all the way back, even in Module 1, we talked about what makes this program so good, right? We talked about the transformation formula. We talked about really putting this into a science. And one of the big pieces of that formula was this new paradigm, right? We said having a completely new way to think, that so many people, when they go through this, they start to say, hey, you know what? This is as profound as being able to see for the first time. And so this is what we're talking about. This is the new paradigm, right? And I want you to ask yourself, right, as we start to close out this module, remember, we're not done yet. We have some really powerful exercises left inside of this module. But as we start to get to the tail end of this module, I want you to ask yourself, right, where else is this being taught, right? Who else is talking about the topics that you've learned now inside of this module, right? How many others are talking about it? And as you start to ponder on that question, you're going to start to realize that it's almost no one, right? Have you ever been inside of a program where they talk about all of this, right, from the beginning or even at all? And I'm telling you right now, I have spent over $200,000 of my own money buying pretty much every program that is out there, whether that be about money, whether that be about making business, whatever it might be. People just do not talk about this stuff. And so this module has been one of the most difficult trainings that I've ever had to make in my entire life. But we here at the Academy, we could have literally just thrown together some business and money-making trainings together, and we could have called it a day, right? We could have said, yep, we've gone ahead and given the students all of the tactics and the action steps that they need. We've done our job, right? Why would we go through this insane process of literally compiling an entirely new way of thinking, an entirely new paradigm, and really distilling that down to the most important parts of that paradigm? Why would we do that? And the reason we went ahead and endeavored on that journey to do literally one of the most difficult things that we've had to do in our entire lives is because we know that if we did not teach you how to think or how to become, then all of the actions and the tactics would literally mean nothing, okay? We knew that we had to go the extra mile to put this together, even though it does not exist anywhere. I'm telling you, if you go out and search, this training does not exist anywhere on the planet all in one place like inside of this module. And yet we knew that we had to go ahead and put this together, and we knew that we had to over deliver to all of the students inside of Remote Wellness Academy, so that way you guys could have this eye-opening experience, and one that would really serve you for the rest of your life, even more than just being able to make a 6+ figure income online, which, trust me, when we get to that section and we get to that phase, we're going to blow your socks off on all of that as well, right? And so this was the new way of thinking and the new way of reprogramming your mind that people say that it's like seeing for the first time. And so this is why we wanted to make sure that we go ahead and compile that for you inside of this module. And that really brings me to how this connects to you as an RWP and your future inside of remote wellness. Because the thing is that as you went through this module, you're going to start to realize that the world would be a completely different place if everyone was able to break free from society's current paradigm and really start to adopt the transformation paradigm, right? If everyone understood that they were living inside of their own movie that was created by their own beliefs and their identity was actually moldable, then what would happen is that we would all start to take ourselves less seriously, and we would start to have empathy with others as well, right? At a global scale. And so if everyone learned about the existence of the limbic self and how you can consciously use your conscious self to choose your actions and behaviors, and how you can separate yourself from your thoughts and emotions, right? It would be a complete game changer for the entire world. And so as you continue your journey inside of this program in order to become a remote wellness practitioner and make 6+ figures income online, your goal in this program is to really commit to this new way of thinking and to this new paradigm, right? What that means is that as you go through your career inside of remote wellness, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be working on empowering every single individual, every single client, every single person that you come across with your transformation services, and you're going to go ahead and help them also have that paradigm shift to this new way of thinking, right? This is how we, as the remote wellness community, are going to be able to make the world a better place, because ultimately the world will be a better place. It will be transformed if they can break free from society's current way of thinking, okay? And so you've seen the reality. We've talked about the statistics. We've already talked about the reality of what society's current way of thinking has created for people, right? They need a new way. The old way has failed them, okay? And at the end of the day, what I do want you to remember is that most successful people on the planet already live what we call the transformation paradigm, right? This might feel like it's new to you. This is not something that we just came up with yesterday. At a very deep level, successful people already think and understand what it is that we talked about inside of this module. And now it's just your turn to have that conversion, to be able to think differently. And then over time, you will be able to empower others to have that transformation as well. And so ultimately, that is why I want to go ahead and welcome you to your new paradigm, as you've really transformed your way of thinking. And now as we start to go through the tactical and the practical trainings that are upcoming for the rest of this module, it's really laid that foundation so that way you completely understand how we are doing that identity shifting process and why we are doing it, and really broken that cage that you were in society's way of thinking, to open your eyes to these concepts of identity and reality and consciousness and choice. It's a really, really big feat. And that's why I do ultimately want to go ahead and welcome you to your new paradigm. Okay. Now, to close out this training, this is the last part of this training. I do want to go ahead and give you some book recommendations and some other sources regarding these topics, because one thing that a lot of people don't recognize is that, did you know there are books out there on how to be stronger, how to be more decisive, how to be a better speaker, a better leader, how to be able to have a better effect on people, right? There's books that are out there on how to become more loving, how to develop a personality, how to get rich, how to have influence, how to become more sophisticated. There are books on all of that. And yet, people don't read them, right? Did you know that hundreds of successful people have written their stories in books and have written down exactly step by step how they did it? And yet, people don't read them, right? How would you explain that? I guess they're just too busy, right? And they're even too busy to be able to throw on an audiobook while they are driving, right? And so what I want to go ahead and do here at the end of this training is I do want to go ahead and emphasize to you that all of these successful people that I know are good readers. That is the one thing that they all have in common, okay? And so as I'm going to give you these book recommendations, I didn't want to just give you the book recommendations and they sit there and you never actually do anything with them. I want to go ahead and emphasize to you the importance of reading as a kind of little bit of a side note inside of this training, because at the end of the day, the quality of your thoughts is going to be determined by the quality of your reading. All leaders are readers. The genuine love for reading, when cultivated, is a superpower, okay? It almost doesn't matter what you read. Eventually, you're going to be reading enough things that your interests are going to take you to that is going to dramatically improve your life, okay? Nothing good can come out of your brain unless you put it there first, okay? If you're going to get anywhere in life, you have to read a lot of books, okay? The person who does not read has no advantage over the person who cannot read. Imagine that, okay? There is no difference between the person who can't read and the person who does not read. They are both illiterate. And so my question to you is, are you choosing to be illiterate? I hope not, because at the end of the day, that is ultimately what's going to decide the fate of your life. And so it doesn't also have to be physical books, right? You can start with ebooks. It doesn't matter if it's even 30 minutes a day. I promise you, it will forever change your income and change your life if you just read 30 minutes a day. And so with that being said, I want to go ahead and give you guys the book recommendations for this module. I've gone ahead and put together 4 of them that are very powerful. Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. This book was something that I read probably almost half a decade ago, and it really was my introduction to the self and the concept of the self. Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. Amazing, amazing book there. How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LePera. Awesome book there. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Amazing book there as well. And then really to close this out here, a hack that I discovered years ago and I've used for many years now is that if you listen to an audiobook at 2x speed while you are reading a book, right, whether that be a physical book or an ebook, right, on Kindle or whatever, you can actually increase both your reading speed and your retention of the information, because it allows you to be able to read at 2x the speed. And sometimes, depending on the thickness of the content and how in-depth everything is, you can even read at 3x speed and go even faster than that. So that is the couple quick book recommendations for this module thus far. What's going to happen next? But wait, there's more. We are not done yet. Now that we've built the foundational understanding that you have of the transformation paradigm, right? Now that we've broken your belief for society's current paradigm, it's now really time to become. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and switch to the practical part of this module. And this is really where a lot of the fun begins, because it's now time for us to define your current version 1.0 self identity. And then after that, once we define that version 1.0 self identity, we're then going to go ahead and design your version 2.0 self and life. We're going to literally design it like an architect would design a blueprint. Okay. And then we're going to get to work on becoming our version 2.0 self. And so in the end, this version 2.0 self is the one that is going to effortlessly create our dream life. And so hold on tight, as if it was even possible. This is about to get even better. And so to really close out this training, here is your engagement question for this specific training. I would love to get your thoughts on how does it feel looking back at the journey of as we were exploring society's broken paradigm and learning about the transformation paradigm, right? As you put all of this together inside of this training, how does that feel? What are your thoughts, right? Do you now see how the transformation paradigm is going to be able to serve you in your life and really on your journey to making 6+ figures online? I would love to get your thoughts. And remember, this is your opportunity to engage. We and the other students love to hear from you, and we do read all of your comments. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the next training where all of the fun really starts to begin. And I will go ahead and see you inside of those trainings.